Welcome to Left Behind Natives, where we speak with those stories that are too often unheard. I'm your host, Charlie Mato-Toyela. In today's episode, I'm joined by my good friend Seth Penn, a member of the Northeast Tribe of Alabama. Seth is someone who, like many of us from state-recognized tribes, has faced ignorance, exclusion, and even open discrimination, not just from the outside world, but sometimes from within Indian country itself. We'll talk about that reality, his ongoing work with the Jewish community, his recent marriage into the Lumbee tribe, and his passion for educating others, of course, which is what really drives all of us today. It's a heartfelt conversation about identity, solidarity, and complexities of being Native in a world that still often denies who we are. So, Seth, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's an honor to get to be on here and represent my people. Like Charlie just said, I'm a proud enrolled member of the Cherokee tribe of Northeast Alabama. I always like to say that we are some of the people that they didn't get. We're the proof that we're still here. And
That's right.
As long as I'm breathing, you'll know that there's still Cherokees in Alabama. So I'm glad to be here with you today,
Absolutely.
Charlie.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I don't think that could have been better said, man. Most people don't know that at one time in history, Cherokees really lived in all of what was North Alabama and technically owned it. We were talking off camera about the 1817 treaty, but that happened on a number of occasions. And of course, it dates all the way back to Black Fox, someone that I'm sure we're both probably related to upstream, but he founded, a lot of that area where our families are from in North Alabama. When people hear the word state-recognized tribe, a lot of times that they misunderstand what that means. How do you personally define that identity, and how does it differ from the assumptions that you've encountered?
Yeah, so I've ran into two different encounters for the most part when it comes to state-recognized tribes, and when you hear that reference or someone ask about it. The first one is people simply don't know what that is. That's a huge one. A lot of people are just simply ignorant regarding a state-recognized tribe or what that means. And the other one is state-recognized tribes are fraudulent, and unfortunately we have to battle that because of the agendas of certain federally recognized tribes out there who, quite frankly, our existence doesn't align well with their political and economic agendas that they have at hand. So as far as how I would define state recognition is basically, we have to keep in mind that the United States is a federally structured nation, meaning states have a lot of rights within our country. And so, you see it with abortion, you see it with cannabis, you see it with a lot of different things. You also see it with indigenous people. The federal government doesn't always recognize a tribe. However, a tribe, due to the structure of our nation, can vote and have its own legislation to recognize that tribe. There's multiple states that do that. I reside and am from Alabama, which has 9 state-recognized tribes, and one of those 9 tribes is also federally recognized. So that's another, point of this conversation is they're not the same thing. Federally recognized tribes are often also state recognized as well within the state they're in, if that state has such a thing as state recognition. And what people need to understand too is that state recognized tribes have their own structure of enrollment to become a citizen of that tribe. But even before that, they have to meet certain criteria laid forth by that state, and oftentimes be backed up with legislation as well to gain that recognition. So it's not simply forming a nonprofit and being an Indian like a lot of people will label and portray state-recognized tribes to be. I would go as far as to say a lot of people probably couldn't even be eligible for citizenship in a lot of state-recognized tribes that maybe are citizens of a federally recognized tribe. I'm not saying they're not indigenous. What I'm saying is there's strenuous structures to the process of becoming a state recognized tribe, but then after that becoming a citizen of a state recognized tribe as well. And while it might not be the same as federal recognition, we can't simply discredit it as not legitimate or not a serious process or a serious thing, because it very much is. And I welcome any of you who would challenge that to try to become a citizen of my tribe and see how that goes for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. You know, I've said a number of times that there are federal tribes today, and I'm not putting anybody down for this. You know, it's all laws and bureaucracy in my eyes. But there are federal tribes today that I don't think would be able, especially in the state of Alabama, would be able to form a tribe from the ground up, even to become state recognized. I think that there would be some struggle. You know, last week I was honored to meet the son of the chief of the Wintu tribe from California. And like so many, you know, like the Lumbee that we'll talk about in a minute, but like so many, the Lumbee included and countless others, the Wintu tribe was federally recognized back up until like the 20s or 30s, I think it was, whenever the laws started taking effect, affecting Native people, and the government found another way to encroach on, you know, rights and sovereignty and land and whatever. But his tribe was removed from the list of federal tribes. They had a great deal of goings-ons, you know, prior to that, and the people they're no longer federally recognized. And his particular group isn't state recognized, I don't believe. There are some tribes in California that are struggling. They do have their own Indian Affairs Commission there, which is good. But there's some that are struggling still today, like the Wekamaloni tribe that I was in a meeting with last year. They are still, you know, doing what they can do, but once again, they used to be federally recognized, and something come up. One of the presidents, I'd like to say, not putting them down, but one of the presidents of the United States didn't like them, and so they become unrecognized, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, that's something that kind of reminds me of my next question for you. You've been a bridge between multiple communities, Native, Jewish, and a lot of others. Do you see any shared historical experiences or common threads that connect our struggles?
Yeah. I have to address this quite often, and unfortunately I do, and fortunately I do as well. And the reason I say that is, you know, something I observe amongst a lot of ethnic communities within the United States of America, whether, you know, Native American, Jewish, African American, Latino, all the communities. I see a strong bond that keeps us together. We're honored to be who we are. The good, the bad, the ugly of who we are, we carry that everywhere we go. We value family, we value taking care of one another, and we value fighting and sticking up for who we are. And that's something that I observe on the good side. But on the other side of that is I see a fight for recognition. And this is something that I talk about often regarding state-recognized indigenous people and the Jewish people, especially in the state of Israel. And I say the state of Israel because Israel is not just Jewish people. There's other ethnic communities within Israel as well.
Right.
So when I distinguish the Jewish people as one, and the state of Israel as all who encompass Israel and what that nation is, whether they're Druze, Bedouin, Jewish, doesn't matter. They all have a right to be there. And that's something that, you know, I catch flack for my work with Israel, especially being an indigenous American who works in support of Israel and is pro-Israel, and oftentimes even labeled a Zionist as well. But what people don't understand is, you know, I'm heading to Israel tomorrow during a time of war. How many of you want to go there? Probably not many of you. But also what you don't know is I'm going there, and I will be meeting with various ethnic communities within Israel while I'm there. I was just there in April. I was doing the same thing. I did meet with Jewish people, but I also met with Ethiopian Jewish people. I met with the Druze community. I met with the Bedouin community and other communities within Israel who all have a right to be there. And I see Israel for what it can be, similar to what I see the United States. I don't see us for who we are right now. I see us for what we can be, a place of true unity and true coming together where many call home and many have a right to belong. And I see what I see in the United States is what I see in Israel as well. And that's truly what I fight for and believe in. But beyond, my work with the Jewish people and with the state of Israel, I try to, wherever I go, find those common bonds that bring us together, whether that's the joys of our stories and our culture, or whether that's the stories of our struggle, to exist, our struggle to survive. So many of our people and so many ethnic communities have had everything done to them to possibly eliminate them, yet we're still here. And it's unfortunate that especially for state recognized tribes, we've survived everything that these other tribes have gone through that are federally recognized, whether it's smallpox, the slave trade, the various wars, the ethnic cleansings. We've survived that, but now we're still here, we're still fighting, we're still battling, and we're having to do it in a courtroom now, or we're having to do it at our state capitol. We're still having to fight for our existence. We're still having to fight for our rights. And I see a similarity in a lot of other communities as well. They're here, they've survived those same things, but yet they're still having to fight for that inclusion. They're having to fight for that road to get fixed in their community. They're having to fight to get clean water where they live. They're having to fight to get those elders help. It's really a shame, but there's so much in common. And if we as, citizens of the United States, regardless of our ethnic background or cultural background, if we could see what we have in common, good and bad, and work together, this country would really be something beautiful. And I don't believe in the Make America Great Again statement. I believe America has never fully been great, but I think it could be. That's going to require us really getting to know each other, putting our differences aside, finding our similarities, and seeing the bigger picture. And that's really what I try to do at the end of the day, is see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. It's not always to see the forest for the trees. I think that's one of their sayings, that it's kind of a trick being able to look beyond everything that's in front of you and see that it's actually got its own thing going on, and sometimes it's pretty and sometimes it's not. You had mentioned the legal battles and what have you. It reminds me of a distant relative who, back during the 1817s, at the time that Alabama was being formed, he actually if he was alive today, he would probably be a member of your tribe, because he's from actually the Jackson County area of Alabama. But that was William Jones. He and another gentleman, I think it was James Fisher. I remember William because we're related, but James Fisher and he both went to the newly formed Alabama judicial system and demanded to have membership as a citizen of the state. And they asked for this because they were some of the 1817 land recipients, and they officially wanted to make sure they didn't get sent to Oklahoma. And so they went to Alabama and said, look, we'd like to become citizens of the state of Alabama. And Alabama said, okay. It's nice when you get to read the positive outcomes of those struggles, but oftentimes, like we mentioned a moment ago, the struggles, we keep struggling. I don't know if there's going to be an end to it, but we'll keep doing it until we die, I think. Many natives today are caught in the digital world, speaking of seeing all this kind of forest for the trees, and they're caught in traditional values. How do you personally balance staying rooted in your culture while engaging with the modern world?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I say it's a tough one because obviously, just for anyone trying to exist at this day and age, we've got so much going on. There's so much to think about. The world's at your hand. If you have one of these, you got anything you need right there. But there's so much of what you don't need right there too.
Right.
And so much of what you need that ain't there. But it depends on how you look at it. So for me, something I try to do is, if I'm using technology, I try to do it in ways that I feel I'm advocating or fighting for my people, or doing something with culture. So right now I'm utilizing headphones, a MacBook, my iPhone. I'm on this podcast talking with you about our people, our culture. I'm enjoying the modern technology, but I'm still an Indian right now. We're talking about Indian stuff, and forgive me if that's not politically correct to some of you, but my grandparents say Indian and I say Indian, and that's just how I am in a personal setting, but I understand indigenous is a lot more, accommodating. But to really get to your question, I just have to always stay grounded and remember where I come from, who I am. I think back to those times of where I didn't have that cell phone, or I didn't have this computer or video games or whatever, and I would just be with my grandpa, be out in the woods, and we would be picking plants or getting ready for deer season or going hunting or going fishing. And that's what I try to do. I try to take every opportunity in my day that I can to be outside and be one with Elohi, with the world, with the earth. That's how I stay grounded. Beyond that, I do utilize my laptop and my phone now to have a lot of resources at hand. That's one beautiful thing about that is you don't have to sit there and flip through books all the time anymore. There's certain things that you do, that are specific records. You can only do that way, but there's so much good information just right there. So, if I find myself with free time, I'm flipping through stuff, I'm reading, I'm informing myself, I'm trying to grow. But ultimately, if I really could, I would probably throw all of the technology in the garbage and I would just go be on the woods and out there and live off the land. That's the way that we as Indian people truly were put on this earth to do. But obviously times change, and that's something too that it kind of goes into a different a deeper context of this question. But that's something that really with everything we're discussing, we need to remember that times do change. And oftentimes I feel we sometimes get too caught up in tradition or this or that, but we don't understand that was probably a tradition because this was going on. However, that doesn't exist anymore. So what's going to replace that tradition? And a reference of that is, and this kind of answers that question too, is some of the stories are told, about certain animals. They'll tell them, I've heard them told, originally there was no wagons. So those versions of the stories are told with no horses or wagons. Then they come on, there's a story with the horses and wagons as part of the, running over tails of certain animals and stuff like that. Nowadays, I've heard them told with automobiles, running over instead of the horses and wagons. So times change. We as indigenous people, we change as well. But that doesn't mean who we are changes. We're still rooted and grounded in our indigenous identity. However, we're no different from the general public as far as, technology changes, things adapt, things change. Obviously, we're not all living in village settings anymore. We're not all growing our own food anymore. So I have a hard time when some people come at me, and I'm not really even referencing non-indigenous people in this statement. I'm referencing certain traditional people that are indigenous. They'll come at you and say, I'm a traditionalist, or that's not traditional. Well, is Alabama football traditional? Is your Facebook account traditional? We seem to pick and choose what's okay and what's not. So I would encourage each person to know who you are, to find what you feel makes you the most indigenous you can be in your area of influence. If that's culture, that's great. If that's language, that's great. If that's being a bead worker, or that's being a farmer, or that's being a lawyer or a doctor, find your area and understand that times change. We as people change, but we can still be honored to be who we are and carry our people wherever we go.
Right. Something you said there about times changing and the word Indian, which I have no quorum with the word Indian myself. And I think it almost, if one thing was going to make this a good episode of the podcast, I think how we talk and everything that we say and how it comes full circle, which is how I've been taught to look at everything, is you start right here, you go over here, and somehow you make your way right back there again. So let me shed some light for anybody watching on the word Indian. Most people today believe that Columbus was looking for a path to India. He was not. He was not looking for a path to India. If you don't believe it, use the technology that you have, pick up your cell phone and ask that Google or any other popular search tool. I don't want to say it out loud because it'll interrupt what I'm saying, but ask it when the country of Hindustan became known as India. And you'll find out that it was a long time after Columbus landed in the Americas. As in fact, Columbus actually, and the people of the time, called us Indios because they thought we were the children of God. You know, I would like to see Indian people thinking of themselves that way today. That would be a dream come true for me. It's not necessarily a shameful pride, you know, like the biblical 7 deadly sins pride. It's not that. I think it's the pride in oneself and trying to become more like God that I think had caused the Euros to look at us that way and decide that we were Indios, you know, which is what they said. And so maybe in the future times will change and people will start looking at things like that, and like you said, stories change. You know, the time that Columbus landed in the Americas, you know, everybody knows that was 1492. Supposedly he had gotten maps from some Portuguese sailors, but the Portuguese had originally gotten those maps from the Norwegians. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we had to say somebody discovered America, but when Columbus landed here, they didn't even know that the Indus River existed, and he may have been looking for a route to somewhere, but it wasn't Hindustan. So a lot to think about. Anyway, I did want to ask you this one question because you recently married, and a very, very nice young lady, very proud for both of you. But she is a member of the Lumbee tribe, and I wanted to ask you, has being married to someone from a different tribe changed or deepened your understanding of intertribal relationships, especially when it comes to cultural protocols, mutual respect? I mean, we both know a lot about the Lumbee tribe because, once again, I'm pretty sure we both have family that are in the Lumbee tribe. But how does that change things for you, how you think about intertribal relationships?
Yeah, so before I answer that, I do want to clarify one thing. My wife, she does have Lumbee heritage. She's from the Chavis family from Robeson County, but she's actually enrolled Southeastern Muskogee Nation, which is a state-recognized tribe in Alabama. And that kind of, I'm going to answer your question, but while I'm on that point, I do want to mention, you know, that's something that so many of us, we kind of have to struggle with, of who do we want to enroll with. Some of us we're enrolled from an early age. All of our families are enrolled in one tribe, but almost all of us have mixed ancestry. And that's the point that, you know, a lot of people aren't aware of, that you might have Creek and Choctaw and Cherokee ancestry, but you can only be enrolled in one tribe. And so that's just a little fact I'll throw out there for somebody who maybe didn't know that. So like with my case, I'm enrolled Cherokee tribe of Northeast Alabama. My clan is Cherokee. However, I do have other indigenous ancestry, but I'm not an enrolled member of those tribes. So with my wife, she does have Lumbee ancestry. Her family was from Robeson County up there, and she has indigenous ancestry from South Carolina as well. But she is an enrolled citizen of the Southeastern Muskogee Nation in Alabama. So I did want to clarify that just before
I appreciate
we get into
that. Yeah,
because you know how you know how it gets with people. So.
I remember when we talked about her family being from Lumberton, and I had just taken for granted. So that I think that was a perfect segue into that answer, and something that you and I were talking about off camera before we started was about the Creek Indians that I have found that, you know, are recognized by the Oklahoma Historical Society as being on the Cherokee Dawes rolls, and of course there's Creek Indians and Choctaws listed on the 1817 land recipients, which was a Cherokee treaty. It wasn't a Choctaw or a Muskogee treaty, but they were on that list. And the ironic thing, and the thing that just really gets me, is once again that whole full circle thing. How so many tribes, especially amongst our own, which really is a terrible thing to happen. I'm so glad that most of the people from our groups get along together okay, but so many of the tribes, especially from the same kind of people, are fighting other people. When I know for a fact that before the 1817 land was given to those couple of Muskogees, those Creek Indians that were on the land recipients, I know that Cherokees and Choctaws actually had worked for the United States government to move the Muskogees, the Creeks, out of the state. And of course, we didn't move all of them because, like you said, there's at least 2 Creek tribes here in the state of Alabama, but you still, there's so much that we're missing of the big picture of what really happened, and I think that's a wonderful thing, and I appreciate you clarifying too. Like I say, it's cool to know that she's a member of the Muskogees that are in Alabama. It's just really, it's cool. It really is. So it's interesting because we all share all these different groups.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And that's something that, we have to, I'm going to answer that question, but it's there's just so much information we can unpack here on these types of conversations and subjects. We have to keep in mind with indigenous communities in the southeastern United States. We were talking about this off camera earlier, but there was slave trades, there was smallpox, there was various wars, some amongst tribes, some were funded by Europeans, some were carried out by Europeans. There was hundreds of years of death and destruction to tribes in the southeastern United States. Some tribes were totally eradicated. Other tribes had to confederate in with other tribes. So, especially in Alabama, a lot of the tribal communities there were a melting pot of various tribes coming together, maybe under one name. Maybe they were considered a branch of the Muskogee Nation, or a branch of the Cherokee Nation, or the Chickamauga and Cherokee people, or a branch of Shawnee. Regardless of what they might have been, a lot of these towns and communities, especially by the late 1700s, and even before that, but especially the mid to late 1700s, these tribes are coming together as one. So if you went to Turkeytown, Alabama, or Willstown, Alabama, or some of the Creek towns down south, you're going to probably see people that maybe aren't the blood of what that town is necessarily considered to be. If it's called a Cherokee town, there's probably going to be some Natchez Indians there, some Creeks, some Shawnees, and even some Catawbas. Or if you go to, a Muskogee town, there's probably going to be a handful of Seminoles, or some Choctaws, or some Cherokees. So that's something we have to keep in mind, is while originally and throughout time there has been distinguished, whether it's culture, language, traditions amongst our people that make us different, make us unique individually as people groups, there's also so many similarities. And this is patterns we've seen over time too, going back even into the Mississippian era of people. There's common bonds there, and then after that time we seem to break apart a little bit into more specific, smaller groups. And then now it seems as a lot of us have come back together, and now we're back in that breaking apart phase, it seems, again. So it goes back into the times change, and we have to talk about things in the fullness. We can't just say, well, this or that with no context. The before or after is extremely important when you're talking about indigenous history. And I just wanted to add that before I answer the specific question. But as far as, what my marriage has taught me about protocol and honoring culture and honoring a tribe that maybe has a little bit different ways than I do, or, along those lines. A perfect example of that is just a few weeks ago, we were at the ceremonial grounds of my wife's people. And, I have certain ways that I've been taught, certain things even that I would go as far as to say that I actually believe in as well. And we ran into one of those. I don't want to get too specific because, I don't like talking about certain traditional things like that. But what I'm getting at is, an elder woman of that tribe came to me, told me, this is how we want to do it here. And it was different than, what I had even told my wife in our personal home setting that I believed and I felt we should do. But that elder came to me and she said, I know you're the head of the house. And I stopped her there and I said, no, ma'am. I said, you're wrong in that. I said, I am not the head of this house. I said, my wife is the head of this home. And I said, you're an elder of this tribe, a woman of this tribe. I said, what you say matters far more than what I think or what I believe. And I told her in that setting, I said, I don't care what I think. I don't care what I've been told. You're an elder of this tribe. You're a woman of this tribe. My wife belongs to this tribe. These are her people. I'm a guest. I said, what y'all say is the gospel. And so,
Yeah.
I've learned to be humble. I've learned to be okay with change, and I've learned to remember the traditional values of our people, which are the woman runs the home.
Yeah.
My children, if we ever have any, their place will be with their mother's people. I can teach them things about my people. I can teach them things I know, but being married in a modern world is not so much important to me as holding to those traditional values of honoring my wife for who she is, a life bringer, and honoring the elders and the women of her people far more than I honor myself or what I personally believe. So that's been something that, I wouldn't say it's necessarily taught me that, because obviously I've been taught that by elders and by my family, but it's been an opportunity to truly embrace that and truly put it to action, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't say his name on the camera, not to disrespect his memory by any means, but a really neat guy that I used to know, which I'm pretty sure you know who he is too, because we both have attended, I guess, all kinds of meetings or ceremonies with his particular tribe that he was always with. It was a federal tribe that he was the medicine leader of, and he was always at the stomp. He was always the leader of their stomp dance. He did it for 50 years, I think, that I know of. He passed away not too long ago, but he was from a whole different tribe. I mean, once again, it's Creek Indians and Cherokee Indians, and he was not even a blood member of their tribe, but he was their stomp dances leader, and it's interesting when you see how this kind of stuff happens, and by my account, by where I come from and what I understand, that makes him in so many ways a member of the tribe, whether it's on paper or otherwise, likewise, we have this government world that we have to live in, the official card carry, and this is what you are, and then we have the real world, which is what you've been talking about, which is we have to respect our women, and they're, and for all intents and purposes, are the boss. We're here really as servants, I guess I could say, if you could translate it that way into something that we would all understand, to do what it is that is necessary for all that. So, let me ask you.
And to speak to what you just mentioned, I'd say that individual was a hell of a lot more of a Creek Indian than a lot of people with that roll card are.
I'll
leave it at that.
He was.
He was.
Yeah. I know he still has a lot of respect today when we go out to the stomp out there. So he's well remembered. But let me ask you this: while you were in college,
we talked about him a lot a few weeks ago at ceremony. He lives on for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I didn't. That's another one of those inter-tribal relationships that I don't even think about him being, I guess, affiliated with your wife's tribe, for example. I just don't. I never think about any of that. I get caught up sometimes in the whole this is a this person and this is a that person thing myself, and it does. It makes it difficult sometimes. But when you look at people for people, then it's easier to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you have an individual like that who truly lives what it means to be an Indigenous person, of respect, of inclusion, of equality, they're going to know a lot of people, and you're going to have a lot of common connections, and that's how you can identify an individual like that as truly carrying out what it means to be a traditional person, and valuing and living those true Indigenous ways of our people, which, like I said, are unity, equality, inclusion. And when an individual does those things, they're going to be well connected, and it's going to be hard to go somewhere and they're not referenced, especially when they're passed on. So I'm thankful for his contributions, and they definitely are living on. And we were up all night there at ceremony, and a young boy was there, I think around 8 years old, out there with us, and me and another individual, we looked at each other and we said, it's all worth it. But I know that, when I looked at that little 8-year-old boy who's there learning the ways, had that individual not done what they did, there would probably be no ceremonies happening right now in Alabama, and there would also, even if there was, I would say the younger generation would not be near as informed and advanced in the efforts as they are. So they definitely were well received, and I hold that person to a very high respect and honor, and many others do as well.
Yeah,
But
I know what you mean. Well,
can't not
definitely.
reference that.
Yeah. You definitely hit the nail on the head, and it's unfortunate that a lot of other people may not have had the chance to get to know him well. I personally didn't know him as well as I probably would have liked to, but at least, by everybody that I've met, I know that much about him. I kind of aim towards that goal in my life, and I think a lot of people forget how. I guess growing up as a young Native, how it is that we learn things, but we learn it, like most people do, from watching others. And so there's always an opportunity for somebody to teach us, to be good and to be respectful and to, really to shape the world. And hopefully that helps us learn how to be a better person. So anyway, well, let me go to the next question here. I'm going to go a little bit out of order and ask you this one because I think that it probably, you don't have to go into great detail about it. It's something you and I both know. But I guess before I even ask the question, I'd like to foreshadow it a little bit just to kind of paint a picture. There is a person who is a medicine keeper from my mom's people's tribe, and he maintains something that not everybody knows what is. It's called a medicine bundle. And just to give you an idea, and the reason I'm telling you this up front, because I want the people to know how significant this kind of thing is. But this medicine bundle that he keeps contains something so powerful that the U.S. government, about 100 years ago, had passed a regulation that we had to, and listen to me carefully, I'm not stuttering, we had to take the medicine bundle and free the spirits inside of it. This is how significant it is. This man was another, just like the gentleman we were just talking about, an amazing person. But I seen a political cartoon about him, I guess maybe 10 years ago or something, and it just really bothered me because I had so much respect for this man. And then I seen this political cartoon, and it was a picture of him. It was drawn by an Indian, which makes me mad, but it was a picture of him holding this medicine bundle that he's known to have. We all know he has it. It's significant. He is a medicine man of a stature that his father was a medicine man and his grandfather was a medicine man, and so on and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. And he has this bundle, we call it, that he's been holding on to for so long that somehow made it past the government law requiring us to release these spirits from these medicine bundles. Like I say, just to give you an idea of how powerful this thing is, the government believes in it, And the political cartoon was a picture of him holding this medicine bundle, and it said "too much power." And I thought to myself, this is obviously a political statement by somebody who doesn't like him, who is Indian, because they are talking about his power, because, none of us, no citizens of the United States have any power against it. I know it wasn't a U.S. government political person trying to make this cartoon. That would be ridiculous. But it said "too much power," and that just really made me angry. Now, I bring that up, of course, because we both know about some political cartoons. We both have seen and experienced some of those. And once again, it doesn't have to be a personal experience with that, but what role do you think that humor, satire, attacks, like political cartoons, play in a Native discourse, and when does it cross the line into being too much?
Yeah, so humor is a huge part of Indigenous culture. I think our laughing, our jokes, our poking fun at one another that's
Yeah.
just who we are. That's brought us through a lot of the toughest times we've gone through. So that's definitely just part of the culture and something that we need. But unfortunately, there's certain individuals out there, both indigenous and non-indigenous, who have, as you just mentioned, probably crossed the line. And I will speak to it personally. You know, I recently have been victimized by an Eastern Band Cherokee cartoon artist. I'm not going to name his name. You can Google him. He does some pretty shitty artwork. Likes to copy other people and make it his own. I would encourage him to, you know, we're talented people as Cherokees. I think you got some better quality within you than that. You know, do some of your own stuff. I say that jokingly, but also not. You know, we shouldn't just be stealing stuff and putting our name on it and being proud of that. That's not the Cherokee way. But you know, I was victimized by that cartoon, and this specific cartoon had a lot of racial stereotyping within that, and it also was personalized to me as an individual, accompanied by, you know, captions and specific information, my locations, things like that. So obviously I would say that crossed the line for me, because it messed up my entire semester of finishing my last semester of college. I had to, you know, get an attorney. I had to meet with the dean of the university. I had to negotiate safety procedures to be able to go to class safely, because this cartoon hit me from several different fronts. It targeted me for my work with Israel, and the cartoon had a lot of stereotypical prejudice and racial demeaning things towards a Jewish person, mixed in with me being Native American. So they had me labeled from one side of it as a pretendian because I belong to a state recognized tribe. They also had an enlarged nose. They had a black hat. They had curls dropping down the sides of my head. They had me bound and tied up in that cartoon. And they were removing my head covering, which, you know, for Jewish people, at least observant Jewish men, you know, you're supposed to wear a head covering. So there was just a lot of things at play there. Another thing is, if you've seen the cartoon, like around my ears and different places, it had it like my skin was fake. And I joke with my wife all the time. I was like, I know dang well I'm darker than that guy who made that. He likes to forget that he's half white. Through his mom. So if we want to get to talking who's Cherokee and who's not, your clan comes through your mother. So that's a conversation for another day. But it is personal. It's personal. He started it and he hit me for no reason. So I'm going to throw a little shade back here and there. But yeah, when it crosses the line, I think is when it goes into a point of harm. It's no longer fun. It's no longer, you know, done in good humor. It's done with the intent to push another person down, to hurt them, whether that be their reputation or to hurt them even physically. Because that's, you know, we live in tense times right now where actual political violence is very much a thing too, especially with the Jewish community and the Israeli community. You know, anti-Semitism is kind of on the forefront of our nation right now. And so with me being tied into that circle, and some people even labeling me as a Jewish person, and I'm not asking for any of this, it just gets thrown in my lap, you know, I have to deal with the effects of all of that. So when it crosses the line is when it's done with the intent to harm, or the results of that might bring harm to an individual. It's a hard one to answer, because I think different people could say, well, that crossed the line here or crossed the line there. But for me, it crosses the line when my safety and my family's safety is at risk. My reputation, that's whatever. I can't spend all my life fighting to save that, because there's going to be people that like me and people that don't. But when I have to wonder if I'm going to get attacked going to class, or if my wife has found out who she is, if that, you know, might result in her being attacked, that's when it crosses the line for me.
Yeah, I feel you there. You know, when you said all that, it reminded me of some of the political rhetoric. I'm being as politically correct here as I can that had been written about me on some of those lists that I'm sure we're both on. But you know, there is the other side of it, the whole quote unquote freedom of speech thing. But But at the same time, I totally agree with you that if it looks like it is going to affect you in such a way that you're worried about making it to class or not, that really does trouble me. That's something. And I say all this because one of the next questions I was going to bring up, uh, and honestly, you just answered a lot of it, but it's the whole, and this will really date this episode, by the way. It's the whole Ann Coulter comment that she made on X the other day, which, by the way, I can't find now. It's been pulled down, I suppose, probably because she realized she messed up big time when she had so many Native people come up and speak up against her.
Yeah.
But the whole Ann Coulter thing, and I'll quote it here. I don't. Hopefully, I won't have to bleep the K word, because I hear that if you say the K word on YouTube, that it might get banned. But she said, her words were, "We didn't kill enough Indians." And I guess when she says "we," she meant either the government or her people. I don't know. She didn't look Native, but as a more or less a investigative reporter, I guess I was looking into how many times she's ever said anything about Native people, and she actually said quite a few things about Native people. She said one thing, I can't remember what it was, but I almost didn't disrespect it. I guess that's as close to saying I respect it as I could come. But she did say one other thing, which she's just honestly an extremist type, wanting to say things that I think gets her views, and I think that's why she said it. But I don't know if she meant it or not. Like I said, she pulled it off, but she did say something else that she hasn't pulled down, which is, yeah, that's right. Instead of thinking of American Indians as tough, brave warriors, much better to think of them as pathetic victims who got their butts whipped. And that one's still up there, and it kind of helped me get to know who she is, because while I've seen her, I guess if you would say politically, if I could be political, which I don't really consider myself, I am more or less conservative. I do fall along the lines of some ideas that liberal people have and some ideas that conservative people have, but more or less I tend to lean more conservative, and like you would probably say, more towards our own people conservative, rather than the whole American idealism conservative. But when I wanted to find out about Ann Coulter, who, like I said, I've seen briefly but never really listened to anything she said, I wanted to find out more who she was. I searched where she said things about Native people before, and to be honest with you, the thing that has made me believe she's some kind of extremist is that she said negative things about most races, except for her own, which, once again, you and I are proof. None of us are 100%, most of our people. I think I told you I've got 1% Ashkenazi, in my family or in my own DNA. But anyway, none of us are really 100% anything. And in my case, we have a lot of Native people that we come from, and I do have a lot of Irish family that are way back in the day, that came in and historically lived with those particular Indian people. I have a Frenchman that came over on an English ship, one of the first people that stepped foot on this land. I always tell people that he was the first savage in the Americas. He really was. His name was Ensign Savage. He was a Frenchman that took an English ship over and married an Indian woman when he got here. So, we're all made of a lot of these different things. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, I didn't understand the concept of racist anything, especially not having grown up in a Native American and in a Black community. I just didn't understand what racist was. We didn't have that where I grew up. I mean, we talked about it historically. We didn't talk about it in the present day. And then something happened and things changed. And I feel like that's where people like Ann has decided to take this opportunity to just, hit anybody, kick anybody when they're down type of thing. Of course, a lot of Native people that are outspoken generally, even one that I don't agree with, one that I usually don't get along with, said some really good things, about it, which he's a good speaker. And I know you're smiling over there. I know you know who I'm talking about, but he's a good speaker and a distant cousin. And I wish he would get over his prejudices against us and our people. But anyway, he said some great things. But at the same time, the whole reason I bring this up on the cusp of us talking about the cartoon is, I guess I want Ann Coulter to be able to say what she said. Now, as far as your cartoon goes that I'm very familiar with, I would like to erase that from history, and I would really, like the person that did it to get some education, because they're missing a lot. But Ann said just an angry, stupid thing in her comment on X, and I think it's important because it lets me know that she felt, so empowered to show millions of people her stupidity. And, she needs some education. And maybe she's getting it right now. I don't know. Like I said, a lot of Native people, even some that I greatly respect. One of the most well-respected Native American attorneys, John Echohawk, spoke out against it. And I was impressed. It was good to see some people representing, what was going on. And like I said, that other person spoke out too, who I don't normally get along with, but if he knew me, he probably would like me a lot better than he does. But a lot of people spoke out and said some good things, and it gave us a chance to bond together. And I think, if more of us, especially people in the Eastern Band, for example, would have bonded together and helped educate their own, if you get me, if they would have reached out and done that instead of any of us having to educate them that are not a member of their organization, I think that would probably help. But how did Ann's comment hit you? How did you feel about that?
Yeah, so I've seen all the comments in response to it from all kinds of different indigenous leaders across the United States, including the short one that you referenced a while ago. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, I know.
And I agree. It was one of the better statements that I've heard come from him. But yeah, I'm going to answer it two different ways. We need to, like I said, let's keep in mind history here. There was really, at one point in time, indigenous people, they did not want us to exist. The whole federal recognition process, the reservations, and I would even go as far as to say state recognition. Yeah, state recognition, the Dawes Act, all these things, that is because they failed to do what they really wanted to do, which was eradicate us, a total ethnic cleansing. So to someone who hates indigenous people, to a nation who did not want us to exist and we stood in the way of its formation, they didn't kill enough of us because we're still here. So we are a direct, my existence, your existence is a direct defiance to that old form of government that sought to eradicate our people. So that is one way that I look at it, as, yeah, y'all didn't kill enough of us, obviously, because we're still here. Y'all are still having to abide by treaties. Y'all failed at what you wanted to do. But then the flip side of that is, with the tense times we're in these days of political violence and just radical people on all sides, I personally I would say I'm a moderate, not because I'm necessarily on the fence about everything, but I personally don't fully align with either side. That's what I mean by my definition of it. So for me, I'm not really a full-blown liberal or a full-blown conservative. I feel what I feel in my heart, and I always carry my people first. That's how I feel politically. So as an indigenous person, when I see we didn't kill enough Indians, I'm ready to grab the war club. I'm ready to fight. That's fighting words to me. And I think a lot of Native people felt the same about that. But then the really scary part of that, in my opinion, is these tense political times and honestly radicalized times that we live in, where protest is no longer joining arms with your brother and walking in peace to see change. It is assassinating someone. It is burning a vehicle. It is, targeting an ethnic community. I have seen firsthand synagogues attacked. I've seen Native American people attacked. I've seen black people attacked. those are very real. So when you start targeting my people, I'm going to be alarmed. I'm going to take that as a serious threat. So for me personally, I can't just, sweep this under the rug and say, oh, she was ignorant or she didn't know. Well, I'm definitely in agreement that she was ignorant. That is that's a level of, you're talking about ending a life. When you use that K word, that is taking someone's existence from the current world that we're in, and that is extremely problematic regardless of who it's directed at, whether it's an Indian person, a black person, a white person, doesn't matter. When you start saying that word broadly towards a whole entire group of people, that's problematic, and I would like to see some serious consequences carried out against her. But also too, not just that, also make her go visit some reservations, make her go visit some cultural events, have some conversations with some elders. Her ass really needs to be humbled, and I think that that would be a great way to do it. So that's how I would respond to that.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. I tell you what, it's we need to know that this kind of thing exists. Okay, so I guess maybe we should have the one mistake rule. Somebody could say something stupid one time, and then we don't have to let it go. They still need to, I don't want to say punished. I don't like that word, but she does need to be re-educated in a big way, And once again, there's no telling what's going on. Like I said, some of the that short man you mentioned, he's an attorney, so maybe a bunch of Native attorneys are getting together. Like I say, John, I have a great respect for, Echo Hawk, but the other one that I'm still on the fence with, or rather, I'm on the other side of the fence, somewhere down the road, I think is what it is. But anyway, maybe they're doing something. I don't know. I really would like to feel like, she could learn what it is that she said. But at the same time, I do agree with you. They didn't end a lot of us, and I think that when they got to the point that they realized we made, as long as we were, I won't say mixed, but there were some of us that they kept around to help strengthen their workforce. Let me just put it that way, And I think that was really the whole reason that they didn't do what Ann said they should have done, is because we were, a very strong workforce. So I've got one other question for you before you go today. It's just a real quick and easy one, and you can answer it short or as long as you like. It's really the question that I've asked in so many different ways to everyone I've interviewed. Looking ahead, what is your vision for not only state recognized and federal recognized tribes, say, getting along, but for them to recognize, some of us, for example, the division that seems to exist amongst our own people, that the one with the cartoon that we were talking about, that's division amongst our own people. We're cousins, we are, there's no doubt it, and it's ignorant that they don't know. But what do you think? What do you think is the hope that we might be able to achieve here?
I think for those of us who are kind of boots on the ground, moccasins on the ground, so to speak, we're living this every day, wherever we're at. We just have to keep in mind the bigger picture. It's a lot bigger than me and you, Charlie. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt some days, doesn't get tough some days. It's just hard. It's tough to hit those spots of where it seems like every day is a fight, every day is an attack, every day is a hateful comment or a threat or a hateful email or a hateful letter mailed to your house. Those are tough times, but we have to keep in mind the bigger picture here, those common bonds that bring us together, the things that our ancestors went through. They gave their life for who they were. They walked hundreds of miles for who they were. Their homes were burned for who they were. They were killed. They were raped. If they can suffer those things and endure through those things, I just have to find the strength from them that I can endure what I have to go through this day, which in my opinion is far less than what they faced. So as far as moving forward goes, we have to stay grounded in who we are, where we come from, the communities we represent. But we also have to keep in mind that it's not about us. It's about something far bigger. It's about 7 generations before us and 7 generations that come after us. And I stay grounded in that personally. I would encourage you to do it, and I would encourage anyone who listens to this to do the same, to stay grounded in that and think generationally. Don't just think about you, because it's not just about us. It's not just about me. It's far bigger. And I try to truly live that and truly, carry that out in every area of my life. I don't think that I can change the hearts of a lot of people. I don't know that I can ever see my tribe even be federally recognized. But what I know I can do is live to a standard of being a true Anakatuwagi person who represents the morals and the values of my people with excellence, and who fights for our inclusion, fights for our rights, and fights for our culture and our language and for our land. And for the generations behind me, I gain my strength from them. And for the generations after me, I hope I'm paving the way for them. And that's how I would answer that.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I tell you what, I hope that you accept this. I think I'm going to take everything you just said and put it on a T-shirt. I mean, that's some powerful, that's some good stuff right there, man. That is really good stuff. And I know the struggle for federal recognition is what it is. There have been some things that have changed along those lines, but for the listener who may not know about the struggle for federal recognition, I believe, okay, I can put my little disclaimer on that if I'm not mistaken, the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma was federally recognized in 1979. The tribe that Dr. Ken Tankersley is a member of, that I had mentioned, the Pequot-Shawnee in Alabama here, if I'm not mistaken, applied for federal recognition in 1977. Your tribe applied for it in 1981, just 2 years after the CNO became federally recognized, I believe, when they became federally recognized. And I have to put that disclaimer on it because they removed that from their website about 6 years ago. But and of course,
they also changed their name too. The Cherokee Nation now, they dropped the Oklahoma off there, but don't let them fool you. And I say that with a lot of love to all my friends out there, but I'm the Cherokee tribe in Northeast Alabama. Y'all are the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma.
That's right. That's right. And, I remember reading a court document that the vice chief of the Katua in Oklahoma had written, and he addressed that perfectly. If I had it here in front of me, I would read it, but he addressed it perfectly. And much respect to the Katua, much respect to the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, much respect to the Eastern Band, the countless other Cherokee that live in the United States, who fit under the fourth ruling of who is and who isn't Cherokee. And that includes some of us that are in state recognized tribes, some of us that are not a member of a tribe, and some of us, many of us, apparently, that don't even know that our family is Indian, which is, I include myself in that, not because I don't know. I'm, like yourself, I was raised knowing who I was. But at the same time, I want to make sure that they know that we are still cousins, brothers and sisters, and that's so very important to all of us to grow and to come and to help us out. So anyway, thank you so much, Seth. I don't think I could say enough to thank you and appreciate some of the most respectful things that some people may or may not have deserved that level of respect, but thank you for saying them. And I'm serious about what you said there, man. That's some good stuff. I'm gonna go back and read the text of this, and I'm gonna see if I can't put some of it on a T-shirt and maybe send you one, because that's powerful. It really is, my friend. And I appreciate you so very much. Thanks for listening to Left Behind Natives. Thank Seth also for his honesty, his strength, and the work that he continues to do across cultures and communities. His story is one of connection between tribes, people, and history, and it reminds us why our voices matter. Be sure to subscribe and share this episode if it moved you. And as always, thank you for helping us bring the stories of Left Behind Natives to light. Once again, Charlie Mato-Toyela and Seth Penn signing out. Take care.